The wind howled like a restless beast, rattling the windows of our modest SUV as snowflakes swirled furiously in the headlights' beams. The road ahead was a blur, its edges swallowed by the unyielding darkness of the winter storm. Inside the vehicle, my family huddled. Dan, my stoic yet visibly anxious husband, Emily, my resourceful and nurturing wife, and our two children, Emma and Jake, bundled in layers of clothing, our breaths forming frosty clouds in the freezing cabin. The faint strains of holiday music played from the car's nearly drained battery, a feeble attempt to mask the growing tension. Emma, my eldest, clutched Jake close, whispering reassurances even as her own hands trembled. Dan, how much farther? The gas light's been on for miles. Emily's voice cut through the oppressive silence. Her tone carried a thin veneer of calm, but her eyes betrayed the fear she worked so hard to suppress. I glanced at the dashboard, jaw tightening. I'm not sure. GPS is down, and there's no cell service? I leaned closer to the windshield, squinting through the flurries. We just need to keep moving. We'll find help. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Outside, the storm intensified, the snow piling higher and higher, threatening to swallow the car whole. Our world shrank to the suffocating confines of the vehicle. Sometimes, life tests us in ways we never imagined. For us, this storm was more than just nature's fury, it was a crucible. Little did we know, help was closer than we thought, and our story was about to take a turn we'd never forget. The SUV rolled to a slow stop as the engine sputtered, then fell silent. A blanket of oppressive stillness replaced the low hum of the heater, and the cold crept in like an unwelcome guest. I slammed my hand against the steering wheel, frustration flashing across my face. That's it. We're out of gas. Emily bit her lip, forcing herself to stay composed for the kids' sake. All right, she said, her voice steady but strained. We'll figure it out. Maybe someone will come by on this road. This road? I shot back, my voice tinged with bitterness. We haven't seen another car for hours, Emily. Jake whimpered softly, burying his face in Emma's side. Are we going to be okay? He asked, his small voice quivering. Emma, always the protector despite being just 13, smoothed her brother's hair and said, Of course we will, Jake. Dad's here. Mom's here. We're fine. I heard the faith in her voice and felt its weight. I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me. I glanced at Emily. Emily, the storm's not letting up. If we stay here, we'll freeze. I'll head out on foot to find help. No, Emily said firmly, her eyes blazing with determination. You can't risk getting lost in this. If something happens to you... Her voice faltered. As our argument simmered, a faint rhythmic thudding reached our ears. We exchanged bewildered glances before stepping out of the car to investigate. Through the blinding snow, a dim light appeared, bobbing steadily closer. It wasn't another stranded driver, it was a soldier in a snow-dusted uniform, his face calm but resolute. The soldier, introducing himself as Private Jackson, raised his voice above the wind. You folks need help? In the depths of despair, hope can come from the most unexpected places. For us, this lone figure represented more than just assistance. He was a lifeline, carrying the promise of safety and warmth. The soldier's words, simple as they were, felt like a lifeline tossed into the swirling chaos. There's a nearby shelter where we've set up emergency aid, Private Jackson explained, his voice steady despite the roaring wind. It's a bit of a hike, but we can make it. I squared my shoulders, stepping forward. We'll follow you, I said, glancing back at my family. We can do this. Emily tightened her grip on Jake's hand, while Emma carried our only flashlight. The storm lashed at us mercilessly as we followed Jackson's lead, his calm demeanor offering a fragile sense of reassurance. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as we trudged through waist-deep snow. Each step was a battle, the icy wind cutting through our clothes and stealing our breath. Jake stumbled, tears streaming down his cheeks as he clung to Emily. I'm so cold, Mom, he sobbed. Emily knelt down, pulling Jake close. You're doing so well, sweetheart. Just a little longer, okay? We're almost there. Her voice quivered, but her resolve didn't falter. Dan and Jackson worked together to create a windbreak, using their bodies to shield the children from the storm's fury. In moments like these, survival isn't just about strength. It's about love, determination, and the small acts of courage that keep hope alive. We reached a fork in the path. Jackson hesitated for a moment, his flashlight illuminating two equally snow-covered trails. One leads to the shelter, he said, but the other, it's easy to get lost. I need to make sure. The pause felt like an eternity. Emily's voice broke the silence. We trust you. Just tell us what we need to do. But as Jackson surveyed the path, I noticed Emma lagging behind, her small frame trembling with exhaustion. Emma, I called, rushing to her side. She gave me a weak smile, but her face was pale, her lips turning blue. Jackson stepped in. She needs warmth now, or she won't make it. He handed me an emergency blanket from his pack. Wrap her up tight. We can't stop for long. With Emma bundled tightly against me, we pressed on. Each step felt heavier, the storm seemingly intent on swallowing us whole. Jackson's voice cut through the gale. We're close. Just a little farther. Finally, a faint glow appeared through the snow, lights from the shelter. Relief washed over us, but the storm's fury didn't relent. We sprinted the last few yards, collapsing into the warmth of the shelter as the door slammed shut behind us. We had made it, but the storm wasn't the only battle we'd faced. Together, we had endured the cold, the fear, and the doubt, proving that even in the harshest moments, the human spirit can endure. Inside the shelter, we were greeted by the warmth of a roaring fire and the concerned faces of other stranded travelers. Volunteers moved swiftly, handing out blankets and hot drinks. Emily collapsed into a chair, holding Jake close as his tears turned to quiet sniffles. Emma was immediately surrounded by medics, her pale face slowly regaining color as they wrapped her in additional layers. I approached Jackson, gripping his hand tightly. Thank you. I don't know how we would have made it without you. My voice cracked, the weight of our ordeal finally surfacing. But just as relief began to set in, Jackson's radio crackled. A strained voice came through. Another vehicle, stranded. They've got kids. Coordinates coming through. For some, the battle is never truly over. Kindness doesn't rest. It perseveres, even in the face of exhaustion. Jackson glanced at us, his expression unreadable, before turning to the door. He adjusted his snow-dusted gear, readying himself to face the storm once more. Emily stepped forward, her voice trembling. You're going back out there? After all that? He nodded. It's what we do. I looked at my wife and children, then back at Jackson. For a moment, I hesitated, torn between staying with my family and following the soldier. Then, with quiet resolve, I stepped forward. You're not going alone. I'll help. In the harshest conditions, humanity's true strength emerges, not in solitary acts, but in the bonds we forge and the courage we find together. As the shelter door swung open, the storm raged on, but for us, a spark of hope burned brighter than ever. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the world blanketed in pristine, untouched snow. The shelter was quiet now, the hum of the generator and the occasional murmur of voices the only sounds breaking the stillness. We stood at a fogged-up window, watching the first rays of sunlight cut through the clouds. Jake leaned against Emily, his small hand clutching hers. We're safe now, right, Mom? He asked softly. She nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude as she kissed the top of his head. Dan and Jackson returned just as we finished our meager breakfast. Dan's face was flushed from the cold, his eyes weary but alight with something deeper. Pride, perhaps, or a renewed sense of purpose. Jackson's stoic expression softened as he nodded at Emily. They're safe. We got them here just before the worst of it. Sometimes, the fiercest storms leave behind the clearest skies and the strongest bonds. As we prepared to leave, Emma shyly approached Jackson, handing him a crumpled piece of paper. "For you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He unfolded it to reveal a drawing. Our family standing beside him, all of us smiling, with the words, "Thank you for saving us," scrawled in uneven letters. Jackson smiled, tucking the paper into his coat pocket. "You take care of each other, okay?" Outside, the snow glittered like diamonds as we loaded into our vehicle, the engine roaring to life. Life's storms test us, but they also remind us of the strength we find in others, and the light we can be in the darkest of nights. We drove away, leaving tracks in the snow, a symbol of our journey and the hope we carried forward.